Hey, we're going to get rolling here this week, and the volume's down in this week's trade, and kind of traded on both sides of up one day, down the next. And so just today, what we want to do is take a look at the supply demand report again from last Friday. But what we're going to do here is we're going to look at what the supply demand report started off at the beginning of the year with the May report, and then look at where it's sitting at now in September and how the prices respond, and make a few points as we go along. So here's what the corn side of it right now. In May, the USDA had that we planted 91.1 million acres of corn, harvested 83.5 with a yield of 179.5. Now, as we move to September, you can see our planted acreage are up 2.2 million acres, now at 93.3, and harvested acres got bumped up to 85.1. But while the USDA found some more acres out there, we have lowered the yield in here from 179.5 to 176.3, essentially keeping production unchanged. When we drop down to the ending carryout levels, though, we got our carryouts going from just over 1.5 billion bushels to just over 1.4 billion, down about 100 million bushels. And where a lot of that came from was the lower carrying levels, from old crop to new crop. The big thing we want to point out here, though, is that world carryout levels are actually increasing. They're jumping around 5 million metric ton. That's a little over 200 million bushels, as world production is forecasted to increase in here. Now, as we look towards the December corn chart that's in front of us, you can see this horizontal red line in here is at 593. And that goes back to May 12th, the date of the report. Right now, we've got Dec Corn sitting 518, 520, down about 70 cents since the May report, even though U.S. carryout levels are down slightly, but we're getting that big jump up on the world carryout figures. This tells us, and what we believe is important to take away, is that the world numbers are having a much more of an impact on the corn futures trade than the U.S. numbers themselves. So as we go through harvest, we know a big discussion is what yield is like, and we talk with producers every day on that. But the futures market is telling us we need to keep a focus on the global supply demand numbers. Now I'm going to flip over to the bean side of it. And with bean, you can see from May to September, planted acres went down 400,000 acres, not a big deal. Harvested acres, dropped off 300,000 acres, and yield went down 0.2 of a bushel. I mean, not big changes there. But when you get down to the world and U.S. carryout figures, you can see U.S. ending carryout levels have jumped 45 million bushels from May at 140 to September at 185. This has occurred because we've got a larger carry-in, as it looks like the higher prices ration some demand on the old crop. What is really interesting, though, here is we got world ending carryout levels that were just above 91 million metric ton in May. Now they're forecasted to be near 99 million metric ton. You look at that jump in here right now, that's more than a 400 million bushel increase in world ending carryout. Now, as we look towards this bean chart, you can see when we had this May report out, we had November beans, they settled that day on May 12th at 14.45. We're down to around 12.80, 12.90 right now. This bean market since May till right now has really had growing ending carryout levels both domestically and worldwide. That's where we're seeing this price pressure. Looking ahead, then, it comes down to South American production. If they have a good crop, you're going to see these world carryout levels increase further, and that's where you can have some downside risk in the bean market. On the same token, if there's crop issues up there, you can make a strong argument, for a bounce in this market. But keep in mind, if it took world carryout levels if it took world carryout levels to increase 400 million bushels for the market to go down $1.50, we need a pretty good drop in here to get that same $1.50 back rally. We're a little bit cautious with this bean market. Now when we flip over to wheat, this is the interesting one. As you can see, planted acres are about the same, up slightly. Harvested acres jumped 700,000 acres. But here in the U.S., the yield dropped from 50 bushels an acre down to 44.5 with the drought up in the northern plains. And then you look at U.S. ending carryout at 774 million bushels in May, dropping to 615 right now. And on a worldwide basis, you got ending carryout levels dropping around 11 to 12 million metric ton. When you look at that, that figures about a 425 million bushel drop in wheat ending carryout from last year to this year. Excuse me, from the May report to the September report. Now we get to the Chicago wheat chart, and again we have this red line on here on May 12th, and as you see, Chicago wheat is actually a little bit lower today than what it was back in May. But as we quickly look to the September Minneapolis, excuse me, this is the December Minneapolis chart, you can see Minneapolis wheat's more than $1 higher than we were sitting in the May timeframe. All of the crop issues were in Minneapolis wheat. That's where we got the big drawdown on supply to support that Minneapolis wheat market. Now, as I look to summarize everything in here, I think the thing you got to acknowledge in here is on our corn carryout. You know, the U.S. corn carryout is declining some, with production and demand similar. It was a carry-in that was lower to bring that down. On the other hand, though, world ending carryout levels increasing as global production has jumped almost 400 million bushels from the May report to the September supply demand report. On the soybean side of it, we've got U.S. increasing in here, lower, even though we had lower production because of the reduced acres, we have a higher carry-in and lower demand. On the world level, though, okay, we might have flat production, but higher carry-in levels. The bull market out there, though, is wheat, as we basically have decreasing ending carryout levels for both the U.S. and world. I just want to finish up here. I realized I made an error on the soybean side of it when I go back down to that slide. When I said that 7.8 million metric ton increase, I said incorrectly that it's 400 million bushels. It's around 285 million bushels is what world carryout is jumping on the bean side of it. You know, just to quickly summarize in here, you know, when you start looking at these supply demand tables and then you look at where the charts are at, if you want to be a bull in the market, it seems that wheat has the most support. Beans, on the other hand, seem like it's a little bit more negative. And corn, you can argue both ways and say it's caught in the middle. But we really got to keep an eye on what's happening on these world supply demand numbers. Any questions or concerns, feel free to drop us an email or give us a ring, and look forward to seeing you next Tuesday. Thank you.